Dallas Cowboys football is his happy place. The halftime show's playing and Jon starts to dance. Those cheerleaders' moves, they put him in a trance. He dreams of a touchdown, a victory so near, but he's seen this before, brings back last year.
This is the One Star Cowboys podcast, and this is the second week that we're trying this something a little bit new this season, and it's just going to be kind of a wrap-up at the end of each week, just because with the Cowboys, whether it's Jerry Jones talking on the radio or just our conference calls with Mike McCarthy and just the injury report, and Stephen Jones also goes on the radio on Fridays, there's just a lot of information that comes out of Fridays that we kind of don't do anything with, and so I thought that this would be a good way to kind of catch everybody up heading into the game each week. I don't know if we'll do one the next week just because it's a Thursday night game, but for Sunday games, I plan on doing this throughout the season. I record them usually Friday evening, and we put them up on Saturday. And so just to kind of get you guys caught up on everything going through Friday evening, I think the biggest thing to kind of hit on here with the Cowboys is basically just the injury situation. And the way that this week opened, I mean, that injury report did not look good. The lengthiest one that we've seen in a while, mainly because you had CeeDee Lamb added on it. You had Trayvon Diggs added. Jake Ferguson was still on there. And then as we were at practice this week, pretty early on Wednesday, we saw Mazi Smith leave practice with head athletic trainer Jim Maurer. And that's never a good sign. But he was walking, and he seemed to be doing okay. Didn't seem like it was any type of major emergency, but we found out later it was a back issue. And so now fast forward to the time of recording this, and it looks like good news on all fronts. It's Jake Ferguson was a full go in practice on Friday. He is obviously coming back from the knee injury that caused him to miss the game last week. CeeDee Lamb, he was a full go. Trayvon Diggs, same deal. He was a full go. And so they're all expected to play on Sunday, and it sounds like same deal with Mazi. He was limited on Friday, but from what Stephen Jones said on 105.3 The Fan, they expect him, unless there's some type of a setback tomorrow, or on Saturday, they expect him to be able to play in this game as well, too. So obviously the defensive tackle spot, major issue of concern with just how poorly they played against the Saints. And so you'd rather have Mazi Smith on the field than not have him. So that's a good sign to have him back. And then the one major change at defensive tackle is that Jordan Phillips got moved to IR because of a wrist injury, which at first I didn't think a lot of. I thought maybe, he didn't play well in the game, and that was because he injured his wrist in the game. Well, then you fast forward midweek, and Jordan Phillips tells a group of reporters that his wrist is fine, and he doesn't know why he's going on IR. So it makes you think, well, are they just stashing him? Why would they be doing something to? Why would they be putting a player on IR that doesn't need to be going on IR, other than they're just trying to buy him 4 weeks to heal a wrist injury that he doesn't believe is injured? It just leaves you scratching your head to the whole thing. And so obviously Jerry Jones, he wasn't asked about it on Friday, but he just brought it up on his own. I can't even remember the question he was answering, but it had nothing to do with defensive tackles. It had nothing to do with Jordan Phillips. It had nothing to do with the injured reserve, but he just offered up that Jordan Phillips was, quote, favoring his wrist. And he said, Jerry said, quote, for some reason or other, there's been an issue about him going on IR. And he said that the facts are he's been favoring his wrist. And then so when he was asked, well, were you surprised to hear that Jordan Phillips said that, his wrist was fine? And he said, no, I didn't hear it. I'm actually looking at a note here that they gave me that said, be sure if they ask about Phillips. And so obviously he's talking about his public relations staff, just giving him a heads up. You probably get asked about Phillips. So if you are, that this is what's going on. So Jerry just really wanted to get that out there, that no, there is something wrong with his wrist, and that's why he's going on IR. And I don't know, it's a head scratching situation right now. Mike McCarthy said on his conference call on Friday that he saw Jordan Phillips, with the athletic trainers getting treatment. So he had to have something going on. And this will be a story that obviously we update you on whenever we find more. But It's just a strange situation, and obviously because defensive tackle is such a position that's been hurting this team for several years, and it doesn't appear to be fixed right now. And if it's not fixed even a little bit on Sunday, then it's hard to believe that they'll beat a Ravens team that could potentially just run all over them to the level of the Saints and maybe even worse. And so I guess just touching on that, I do think that the Cowboys will have a bounce back performance on defense. I think just for nothing else other than just human nature, coming off a game where you get embarrassed like that, I don't think that they will get embarrassed again. I think that you'll see a better defensive performance. I'm not saying that means that they're going to win. I think you got two desperate teams here, but I do think you'll see a better, more motivated team. When it comes to stopping that run, though, a big name that I think you're going to see in this game too is DeMarvion Overshown. Didn't get a lot, didn't make many impact plays against the Saints, where that was completely opposite from the Browns game. He was spying Deshaun Watson in the Browns game. I think they're going to have him do the same in this game against Lamar Jackson, and I think that is DeMarvion Overshown's strength, and that could potentially be the X factor in what helps the Cowboys win this game is how Overshown plays, spying Lamar Jackson, because as most know, Lamar Jackson might be the most dangerous player in the NFL, just with what he can do with his legs, what he can do with his arm. Mike McCarthy said during the week that they were using Trey Lance a lot in practice to try and simulate how Lamar Jackson can extend plays and what they need to do defensively against that. And so that'll be an interesting matchup to watch. I think Overshown has a much bigger role in this game than we saw against the Saints. Hit on a few more here. Something I heard from some fans, Kent Garrison, who's on our podcast, brought this up as well on our most recent show, talking about how there was just a kind of a lack of emotion from the Cowboys, particularly on the sideline, as they were getting beaten badly by the Saints last Sunday. And there's been some references made to the way, Dez Bryant would have some emotional outbursts on the sideline. Cameras would catch it, and it usually led to some pretty big storylines and stuff. So I decided I'm going to ask Mike McCarthy about that this week and kind of where he stood on, do you think those are good? Do you think that there are a lot to do about nothing? Do you want to see players be like that? And from what McCarthy said, he gave a lengthy answer. It doesn't sound like he's a huge fan of that. At one point, he even said that, he talked about how emotion's a big part of the game, but he said in life in general, it's probably no different than in football. It's a lot easier and self-fulfilling to yell as loud as you can the MF word and feel good about it. And maybe it looks like you care, but he said he doesn't think that perception is always reality. And so I don't think that Mike McCarthy went into the locker room after the game. I don't think he looked at tape during the week and said to the team, hey, we need to have more emotion on the sideline. I don't think he felt that was missing. Maybe it was. I don't know. I've heard that Micah was pretty emotional. I know the cameras didn't really catch it. I've heard that he was on the sidelines. Assistant coach Al Harris, I guess, was as well. Again, cameras didn't catch it. I know that there's been some clips over the years, whether it's Dez, whether, Chris Richard yelling on the sideline. I know fans love it. I'm just telling you, I wanted to ask McCarthy about it because he's obviously been doing this for a long time. It sounds like that he doesn't think it's as big of a deal as maybe some others think, but interesting to watch going forward. If they play like they did against the Saints, again, this Sunday against the Ravens, I wouldn't be surprised if maybe you see a little bit more of that on the sidelines if things are just really going that far out of control and the team looks like it's heading for a 1-2 start. Something else I wanted to hit on a little bit here was, this isn't a real big Cowboys topic. I just thought it was an interesting moment from Dak's media availability on Thursday. He was asked about Bryce Young, and if you're not following, Bryce Young was benched in Carolina. He was the number 1 overall pick in the draft a year ago, and things aren't going well there, and obviously plays the quarterback position, just like Dak. So Dak was asked this week, basically, about having, not sympathy, but kind of like an ability to empathize with Bryce Young because of the fact that, there's been times where Dak's been scrutinized before, and when the reporter asked the question, he said it in a way of Bryce Young is getting a lot of heat. He got benched. You've been there a little bit, and the way Dak just kind of turned and looked and said, benched? Kind of, and it led to laughter, and it was kind of a joke and just a way of, I've never been benched before, but in true Dak fashion, as he usually does, has a lengthy answer explaining how it's so early in Bryce Young's career, and there's a lot of changes that can happen, whether it be, play caller, offensive line, playmakers around you that contribute to your success on Sundays, and that, people shouldn't be writing him off just because they're in a tough spot there. But it was a pretty, there weren't a lot of standout moments from really any of the players in the locker room this week. And it was kind of almost we know what we did in the tape that we put out there against the Saints, and we have to be better than that. It wasn't a lot of, we had this, big come to Jesus moment, and everyone was yelling at each other, and we specifically held this team meeting. Like, they had their typical team meetings, players spoke, but nothing major like that I would really say, oh, this is going to be a difference. Look for this on Sunday. But a lot of, kind of the typical speak that this team has used when they've lost a game before, which in a way you could kind of be critical of that, because the last 2 times they've played at home, they're not just losses, they're embarrassing losses. And I just think there's too much talent on this team for this team to be embarrassed, especially at home. So it will be interesting to see the way that they respond to it. Like I said, I do think that the defense will play better. I do think that you won't have any questions about effort the way that they were after this game, with specifically Micah pointing that out, which, by the way, Micah talked about on his podcast. Micah talked about the effort after the game, but he's the only one that has said that. There hasn't been any other player, at least not one that I was around this week in the locker room, and certainly nobody in the coaching staff or front office that mentioned that they thought effort was a major issue. But of course, that's always going to be something that is brought up when you are beaten that badly. And it just happened too many times now in the last couple of years with this Cowboys team. Whether you talk about the Cardinals game last year in Week 3, you talk about the loss to, you can count the Niners game in there, a little bit of that Buffalo game, up in Buffalo, obviously the playoff loss to Green Bay, and then now you have this game, and it just does make you wonder a little bit, about the effort in some of these games, because again, there's just too much talent on this team for them to be getting their doors blown off. There's too much talent on this team for an opponent to come in their building and on their first 6 possessions just march right down the field and score 6 touchdowns. And so this will be a fascinating game to watch on Sunday. Both teams obviously need this game big time. Cowboys don't want to fall to 1-2. The Ravens obviously don't want to fall to 0-3. And I do think that still these are 2 very good teams. And I think as the season goes along that we'll see that. And so I'm very intrigued for this game. And I imagine a lot of you are as well. And so this is just our weekly wrap-up podcast. We'll obviously continue with the same stuff that we've had. We'll have something up, immediate reaction right after the game, and then our podcast again next week, getting you ready, for the Giants game, Thursday Night Football in New Jersey. So keep checking back with us. We appreciate everyone listening. We appreciate everybody that, shares this or retweets it, or just even if you just tell a friend about it, that, One Star Cowboys podcast, same crew as last year, just change the name. Hope all you guys enjoy the product that we have. If not, let me know. Email me, shoot me a message on Twitter. We want to keep making this thing a better process every year that we do it, and we plan on doing it for a long time. And so appreciate all you guys out there. Thanks for listening.
John's weekly recap, it's all the rage. He laughs and he hollers, takes center stage. Win or lose, he's got a grin on his face, 'cause Dallas Cowboys football is his happy place.